Okay. Write down on a piece of paper potential research paper topics that interest you. Specific one. I'm going to have you keep and hold on to that.
What was the question again?
Just write down any specific research paper topic that you think would interest you. So what would you want to write a research paper about? And then just look up at me when you're done. Okay, so we're going to talk about the main introduction of your research paper, which is developing your thesis. So that's like the meat of your research paper. So that is basically your claim of what you're going to argue throughout the paper. So in general, it's basically just a single sentence that ties together the main idea of what you're arguing. So you're letting your reader know what your paper is going to be about, and you're declaring your position. So there's two types of papers, and with that there's two types of theses. So the first obviously is an informative paper. Informative is just you're giving information on a certain topic. So you're not arguing anything, but you're just letting someone know what you're talking about and you're researching it. So there is an informative thesis that goes along with that. That technically doesn't have an argument. It's more of you're declaring your intentions and then you're letting your reader know what you're doing up until the conclusion. So an example of that would be to make lemonade. You must gather the ingredients, gather the tools, and implement the correct measurements. So that's foreshadowing what you're going to be talking about in your paper. The next is a persuasive paper. That's a little bit more common, and this thesis needs to be arguable, so it needs to be something that you can back up from your own support or outside resources. And it contains your opinion and why that is correct. So the example for that one would be pink lemonade is the best type of lemonade because it is not as bitter and it's easier to make. So with this thesis, you can use you can change it to what kind of paper you're writing, like I said. So there's informative and persuasive. Depending on the length of your paper, so sometimes I would say if you're writing an exam in 45 minutes, you need to bust out a paper in a period. You want to have 2 or more points in your thesis to organize the rest of the paper. Otherwise, if you're doing like a longer research paper like we do in college, which could be up to 6 pages or 10 pages, you want to use one overarching point that'll foreshadow the rest of the paper. So for 2 points, you want to say something like, technology should be banned from schools because it takes away from student focus, it impairs relationships between students, and can have a harmful effect on the student sleep cycle. So that is usually made for a paper with around 3 to 4 body paragraphs, and each of those points are for the body paragraph. So your first one would be, it should be banned because it takes away from student focus, it impairs your relationships, and then it can have a harmful effect on the student sleep cycle. So that is just overall shows you what you're talking about. More organized, easier to write. Next is the longer one. So with that one, you want to have more of a general topic. You don't want it to be you don't want to be specific because you don't want to have really long paragraphs. So for that, you'd want to write something like, in Forrest Gump, Jenny follows a reckless path as a result of her traumatizing childhood. So you can bring up a bunch of aspects of her traumatizing childhood and put it into the paper and write about those specific things. You can make subtopics out of that. So we're just going to talk about main characteristics, kind of the guidelines for creating a thesis. So typically for length, should be shorter because you want it to be narrower, but like I said, it depends if you're using 1 or 2 points. So it's typically just a concise sentence. It can be 1 or 2 lines. So usually 2 clauses, the independent clause and the dependent clause. The independent clause would be your opinion, and then the dependent clause would be the reason behind that. So the little foreshadowing evidence to support your opinion. And then the position, so where in the paper you want to put your thesis. So you want to always keep it in the introduction, and it really just depends on the teacher, but I would say you should put it within the last 2 sentences of your introduction. So give a brief example of what you're going to be writing about, and then your thesis should be either second to last or last in your introduction. So the strength of it needs to be arguable. So if you're writing a persuasive paper, it needs to be something that you can have an opinion on. It can be this way or it can be that way. So examples A weak would be pink lemonade is easy to make because it only takes 3 ingredients. Well, it does takes 3 ingredients, so it's not something you can argue against. Or something like eating your vegetables is healthier for you, or eating Cheerios prevents heart disease, something like that. Or a stronger one would be pink lemonade is tastier because the added strawberries are more flavorful. So you could argue against that and say the strawberries don't make it more flavorful, it makes it more gross, or it makes it less tastier than as opposed to just saying that it takes 3 ingredients. And then we're going to talk about the inverse triangle model. So basically what we're doing is we're narrowing your thesis now. So you don't want your thesis to be too broad. So this basically follows the design of your interest, theme, general topic, and your narrow topic. So your interest in this case would be World War II. Broad topic, lots of things to write on, but you don't want to just write about World War II because you're going to be writing a 20-page paper. You don't want to do that. So that's our topic, and that's what we're going to stem from. Next is the theme. So theme is going to be the debate and diplomacy in history. So that's something we're going to go along with. We're going to narrow that down to that, so there's an overarching idea. Next is going to be the general topic, so war in the Pacific, and then you're going to narrow that topic even further to the surrender of Japan. So we're going all the way from World War II to the surrender of Japan. So we have one thing to talk about. We have subtopics to put in the paper that relate to that. So this would be, you could follow this model, or you could follow the thinking map. And the thinking map is, as you can see, you're going to pick out a topic, any topic at all, and you're going to point to how we could narrow that down. So do any of you guys have like a broad topic you can think of? Just anything. Anything come to mind?
Animals.
Animals, okay. So what are some things about animals that we can talk about? How do we broad down the subject of animals? How do we make that arguable? What can we argue about? Environment, like how?
Like where they live and how they adapt to their environment.
And how could you further that even more into an argument? So how would you make that arguable?
Some animals are better at height. Well,
Some animals are more suited to survive in the ocean than on land.
Yes, you can say that. For an informative, yes, you can definitely say that. For persuasive, you could even say, we are cutting down more of the rainforest, therefore causing animals to leave their habitat. So that's how you can relate the environment to animals. You guys think of any other topics that you can break down, that you can narrow enough? Anything? Just something general?
Video games.
Video games. All right, that's a good one. How could you, say we're writing a persuasive paper, what's a topic we can break from in video games? So you can think positive or negative. So what's something positive about video games? What's something negative about video games?
video games help brain stimulation.
There you go. That's a positive. You can break that down. You can narrow that down to how does it affect the brain? How does it affect the brain? What kind of brain stimulation does it give? And that's more positive, and then it's narrower than just video games. So that's something you can argue on. So here's just another example. So we can go from alcoholism to the causes of alcoholism, scientists, mathematicians, Albert Einstein's impact in the 20th century, Elizabeth in England, health concerns in Shakespeare's England, tennis, to the rise in popularity of women's tennis. So we're going to talk about what defines a weaker thesis. So mostly what you want to focus on is your claim. So you don't want it to be unclear. For example, if you're going to say this paper will explain the pros and cons of, you don't want to say that. You don't want to come right out with it and say the pros and cons. The next is if it is a true statement or a statement of fact. So exercise is good for you. That's not something that we can argue. You would more so want to say, if you could even relate it to exercise, that pre-workout supplements are bad for you, and here's why. Some people say they're good for you, some people say they're bad for you. So you need to have something that you can provide a counter-argument for. And then third, make an overly broad statement. So like I said, individualism is good. Well, what about individualism is good? What about video games can you write about? You can write about that it causes brain stimulation. Next, what defines a strong thesis? So is it debatable? Like I said, can you argue against it? Are there two sides of the topic? You don't want to just write down a fact unless you were doing an informational paper. You want to narrow it, and it wants to be a defined claim. So you want the reader to know what you are arguing about. And then now we're just gonna do a little thing, a little activity. I'm gonna read it, and you guys are gonna tell me if it's strong or weak and why. So the first one is pollution is bad for the environment.
It's weak.
Why?
It's not arguable.
Yes. The second one. Illegal drug use is detrimental because it encourages gang violence.
Strong.
Why? Why is this one strong?
Because it like gives points.
It has the two clauses like I talked about. So illegal drug use is detrimental, your independent clause, because it encourages gang violence. That's your dependent clause. Yes.
This one clarifying dependent clause is what your opinion is, and independent
Yes.
is the fact, correct?
No, it's switched. Independent clause is your opinion, and then dependent clause is the reason.
Okay.
Yeah. So this first part would be the independent, second part would be the dependent.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to see. Third, instead of drilling for oil in Alaska, we should be focusing on ways to reduce oil consumption, such as researching renewable energy sources. Strong or weak?
Strong. I think it's strong.
Yeah.
You can make an argument with it.
Right.
Exactly, and it's narrow too. So instead of drilling for oil in Alaska, we should be focusing on ways to reduce the oil consumption, such as researching renewable energy sources. So there's your reason from it. This paper will address the characteristics of a good corporate manager.
It's weak.
Weak.
Why?
It only has your opinion.
Yes. College students shouldn't have to take a required core curriculum, and many core courses are graded too stiffly.
Strong.
I think it's weak.
It is weak. Why is it weak?
Again, it's just an opinion. There's no factual basis on it.
Also, it brings up 2 points. So you have college students shouldn't have to take a required core curriculum. Many core courses are graded too stiffly. That's almost 2 independent topics you can put into 2 different papers. So we have our final one. While both Northerners and Southerners believe they fought against tyranny and oppression, Northerners focused on the oppression of slaves, while Southerners defended their own right to self-government.
It's strong.
It is strong. Good. Seems like you guys got your thesis statement. So for your final activity, see if you can put together a thesis statement for the research topic that you provided, and then we'll go over them. Actually, I'm gonna have you guys write it on the board. So there's expo markers right there. Each one of you guys just write your thesis statement on the board and we'll go over it.
No.
Yes, do it. So once you figure it out, you can go ahead and write it on the board. And if you need help, just ask.
I need help.
You need help with,
Thesis.
what's your topic?
Animal cruelty.
Okay, so how can you put it into something that's arguable?
Can you
What
figure
about
out those?
animal cruelty?
That it should be, that people should be jailed or like ticketed, like heavily fined
You should be heavily fined.
for animal cruelty. And should not be able to have any more animals.
So we should make a law
Yeah.
for animal cruelty. So we can put those people in jail. There should be stronger laws for animal cruelty. But you need to put that into some kind of developed thesis statements. You need to have your opinion, and you need to have a brief reasoning behind it. Can I go write yours on the board?
I don't even have a test.
Very nice.
Can I help you?
Yeah, be respectful of other students' thesis statements. Nick.
Might be. This marker doesn't even work. Thank you.
I need you guys to move in a sec, because I'm gonna edit them a bit. You good?
Yeah.
Alright. Can you move this camera to like face this person? Alright, so let's go over these. Alright. There should be a law that states that if a person mistreats an animal, they will go to jail and cannot have any animals. What do you guys think about that? Do you think this is too broad? Could it be narrowed? So let's go over it one more time. There should be a law that states if a person mistreats an animal, they will go to jail and cannot have any animals.
It can definitely be narrowed down.
Yes, and what also do you guys find about it that could technically clarify it is could be developed further?
It's all opinion again.
Yes.
There should be.
Yes, there should be, so we don't want to include that. There should be a law that states that if a person mistreats an animal, they will go to jail and cannot have any animals. So what you want to do is you want to incorporate some strong fact about what kind of laws we should have. You just want to narrow this down more.
I feel like
So-
just the mistreatment could be.
Yeah, that should be
Interpret it like
clarified
anything,
too.
anyway.
There should be a law that states it. Yeah, definitely. So we want to narrow this down as well. Narrow this down. They will go to jail and cannot have any animals. So for the most part, try to make it less opinion-based and more argument-based. And second, although the science community is torn on their use in food, quaternary ammonia salts do actually lead to weight loss. What do you guys think about that one?
I think it's strong.
So you have though the science community is torn on their use in food. Is that a comma right there?
Yes.
Okay. Although the science community is torn on their use in food, quaternary ammonium salts do actually lead to weight loss. So that's a good argument to say they do actually lead to weight loss. You can easily make up your topics and you can support your thesis. That's a good one. Sociocultural aspects in psychology is mostly explored by race, gender, ethnicity, and social class.
Explain. I bet.
Is explained. Okay. What do you guys think about that one?
It's factual
Yes.
because of definition, but it doesn't give.
It's almost a little too factual.
Yeah.
So, it is social cultural aspects in psychology is mostly explored by race, gender, ethnicity, and social class. So you want to avoid just stating a fact. You want to add more of your opinion into that. Okay? Good? Good. How long did I go?
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.